If I complain and I blame and I make excuses and I feel sorry for myself and I judge everyone, that's not the new person you want to become. You got to leave that person behind. In the overcoming process is the becoming process. Look, I react. The question is, how long are you going to react? Justified, valid or not, the only person that's hurting is ourselves. It's like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies. Shorten the refractory period of your emotional responses and you'll keep your body and brain out of the past. This is where your thoughts can literally make you sick because the long-term effects of the hormones of stress push the genetic buttons that create disease. And my response to traffic, my response to my ex is actually weakening my organism because my body can't live in emergency mode for an extended period of time. And the response causes the brain to fire incoherently, causes the heart to fire incoherently, and now the autonomic nervous system is out of order.
You just came from a retreat, which is, for anyone that hasn't been to one, they're so spectacular. How are the retreats going? What's new?
The 7-day retreats are our laboratory. It's really interesting when you can get a group of people that are on the same schedule, that are waking up at the same time, basically doing the same things, eating similar food. It's a great lab to measure transformation and change. And so the 7-day events are a great way for people to retreat from their lives, and to remove the constant stimulation in their external environment that reminds them of who they think they are as a personality. It's important to separate ourselves from the people we know and the places that we go and the things that we do at the exact same time every single day to remind ourselves that we're creators in our life. So the 7-day events are an intensive immersion into knowledge and experience to ultimately measure transformation. And so in Denver, we had about 2,000 people and we did 4 scientific studies, great studies. And we had a lot of the researchers that are studying our work participate in the 7-day event. And these are neuroscientists, from Johns Hopkins, from UC San Diego. These are Harvard cardiologists and mathematicians. These are trained people that have seen the data. Mm-hmm. And now it's so important to sit in the seat and seeing what takes place on a personal level, because the effects that we're measuring point the finger at the idea that your nervous system is the greatest pharmacist in the world. Mm-hmm. And I asked them, why did you come? And they said, because there's medicine taking place inwardly in people. So it was a full-on 7-day event, great group of people. We had probably 70 different countries from around the world attend.
No one can get in. Anyone I ever talked to, they're like, yeah, I tried to get in, but couldn't get in.
Yeah, I think that's one of our biggest challenges is that they sell out so quickly. But here's the thing about that. And you know this because you came.
Yeah.
If you do an online course, you're going to be distracted. You're going to be looking around, eating, laying on the couch. You're not going to be really present with the content. I think there's so much power in communing people together that really want to change and transform and want to overcome themselves. There's an emergent consciousness that takes place when you get a group of people together that are behaving in the same way. And that emergent consciousness is an awareness of possibilities that we were never aware of before. And so it's not uncommon in a 7-day event where people show up. There's someone who stands on the stage and tells the story of how they had stage 4 cancer and they no longer have it. Or they had Parkinson's and no longer had it. Or they had myasthenia gravis and they no longer have it. Or muscular dystrophy and no longer have it. These are the 4-minute miles. And when people see that, they're seeing possibility and they're seeing the example of truth. Mm-hmm. So the outcome of that is that once people become aware that that possibility is a reality, their belief in possibility normally becomes greater, and their belief in themselves becomes greater. And invariably, the person's looking at the person on the stage saying, God, she doesn't look like a vegetarian. She doesn't look like she's vegan or organic. She just looks like a normal person. She's not particularly young or buffed, but she healed herself, and someone in the audience can relate with that person and say, if she could do it, I could do it as well. So the outcome then is that you see one person step out of a wheelchair, and then you see 4 other people at the end of the week step out of a wheelchair. You see one person who's blind. I know this is hard to believe. It's hard for me to believe. That's seeing. And then another person at the same event seeing as well. So just like an infection spreads amongst the community and creates disease, health and wellness all of a sudden becomes as infectious as
disease. Has to work the other way.
AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement that delivers daily nutrition through gut health support and is backed by multiple research studies, so you can trust what you're putting in your body. I trust AG1 because, unlike so many products, their entire formula is backed by research studies, not just the ingredients. Over 14 years, AG1 has been focused on innovation with a trusted, nutrient-dense blend that's the perfect complement to my diet. I can trust their research and how they're validating the product working in the body. AG1 has been third-party tested for safety for years and is trusted by experts and medical professionals, giving you one less thing to research. They're posting results online from their studies, and it's interesting to see how many of the study participants had the same feelings of energy, focus, supported digestion, all from using AG1. For example, at 30 days, 80% of the people in the research study noticed less gas and bloating. 97% of the people in a research study felt more energy. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for so long. It's easy and satisfying to start your journey with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free bottle of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/prettyintense. That's a $48 value for free if you go to drinkag1.com/prettyintense. Check it out.
The 3D experience of being in an event. The other thing that we discovered, which is super powerful, is that people change people. And we have this amazing study where we're looking at genotypes, and genes make proteins. So your gene expression is different than mine. Your genetic code is different than mine. Everybody's is unique.
Even with the first same birthday, you know?
Yeah, exactly. and genes make proteins. So we're measuring a group of people at the beginning of a 7-day event. And at the end of the 7-day event, 77% of the population was expressing the same genes and making the same proteins.
Wow.
The probability of that happening is almost impossible. So the flock.
Is this herd, like a Bruce Lipton kind of thing where you have like the 3 different environments essentially, and you put cells into each one and they become the environment. They become bone, they become fat. And how do you create the environment?
Yes. So 77% of the population is expressing the same genes and making the same proteins. That means
in the event or in general?
In the event, okay. At the end of 7 days, okay. Right? So the tribe, the flock, the herd there's something emergent taking place, and they're biologically evolving together, right? So think the same thoughts, make the same choices, do the same things in your life, create the same experiences, and feel the same emotions. Your biology should stay the same because you're staying the same. Your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, your hormones, and even your gene expression stays the same. So then give people new information. Give them knowledge, give them information, and make it be about science. Combine quantum physics with Newtonian physics, with neuroscience and neuroendocrinology.
The curriculum is the petri dish.
Yeah. Give them information about epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology and electromagnetism, and learn that information. You got to learn it, and learning is making connections, but then you got to remember it. So you got to engage with someone next to you and teach it back, so you begin to install.
That is a really cool part of doing the week-longs and sitting with these groups, is that you make each other speak back and forth. Like, did you get it? Yeah. Because there's a big difference between like hearing it and being able to regurgitate it. Yeah. Which means that you've understood it on a better level. And maybe not completely, but
but you're building a model.
Yeah.
Right? And if learning is making synaptic connections, remembering is maintaining and sustaining it. So this information is so much easier to forget than to remember, because it goes against how we're programmed. So you got to remind yourself of what you learned, reproduce the same level of mind, then you start installing the neurological hardware in your brain. The more you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, the how gets easier, because you can assign meaning to the act. And when you do that, you switch on your prefrontal cortex, and it wants an outcome. So then give people knowledge and information. They'll start thinking differently. Have them make different choices. Have them do different things. Have them create different experiences. Have them feel different emotions. is it possible that their biology changes? And in fact, the data suggests, talking about the environment,
stress is a common factor that affects everyone in today's fast-paced world, leading to various issues. What if the answer to a better stress response is in a key nutrient? I'm talking about magnesium. Actually, I'm specifically talking about Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This one-of-a-kind product is designed to reverse low levels of magnesium, which could be leading to a multitude of other health problems. What sets Magnesium Breakthrough apart is its ability to support healthy levels of stress hormones like cortisol, a better balanced stress response in your nervous and hormone systems, and healthy production of GABA, the relaxing neurotransmitter, leading to a more peaceful and better flow state. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It's the only organic full-spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress resilience and better sleep, all in one bottle. Simply go to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense. In addition to the discount you get by using promo code PRETTYINTENSE, there are always amazing gifts with purchase. Go now to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense and get your Magnesium Breakthrough and find out this month's gift with purchase.
There's so many thousands of genes at the end of 7 days that are upregulated that suggest that the person's literally living in a whole new life, in a whole new environment, and they're in a ballroom. And there's really nothing very stimulating about a ballroom, right? So,
and it's quite cold in there usually.
so the inward changes that they're making, they're very inward changes, emotionally, in thought and behavior. When they're feeling an elevated emotion, their body's so objective. It doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's creating the emotion
which is
and the emotion that they're creating by thought alone. And if the environment signals the gene, and it does, and the end product of an experience in the environment is the emotion, they're actually signaling genes ahead of the environment, and their biology begins to change. So the 7-day events are the place, the petri dish, where people are going to learn information. They're going to apply it. They're going to personalize it. They're going to demonstrate it. They're going to get their behaviors to match their intentions, their actions equal to their thoughts. They're going to get out of the philosophical, theoretical mind experience, and they're going to look for the physical experience of the truth of that knowledge. And when they feel the emotion from the experience, they're teaching their body to understand what their mind has intellectually understood.
They embody it.
Exactly.
When they feel it, they go, it's in a new embodiment. It's a truth now.
Yeah, it is the truth. Yeah, it is a truth because they're embodying the truth of that philosophy. And that's what's actually changing their gene expression. So the information's no longer in the brain now. The information's in the body, right? And now you're in a different state of being. Reproduce the experience. Yeah. Do it over and over again, and neurologically and chemically. You'll condition the mind and body to change and work as one. And now you're beginning to become that knowledge. So over time then, the transformation that takes place in a person of going from one personality to another personality literally means then on some level their health or their life should change. And that's kind of what the data has been saying. So we use the 7-day event because there's no place where you can do such large studies. We've done the largest studies in the world on meditation. We have the largest database on meditation with brains, with hearts, with blood, with breast milk, with
I mean, you're also doing, even in the documentary you have coming out, there's the random generator of zeros and ones, right? That's running the entire time that the events are going on. So you're doing so many studies. You said there were 4 studies going on in this recent event that you did. So anyone in particular that you could share, or which ones were happening, and what was learned?
So we reproduced a study that we did a little ways back because it was such a profound study. There was studies done years ago at UC Berkeley where they took rodents and an old rodent and a young rodent, and they merged their blood supply. They merged their circulatory system. And over a period of time...
Like as in they were connected to each other through
their blood.
Okay. Yeah. Not from birth.
No.
Or they actually connected them.
They surgically connected them.
Whoa.
And the outcome was that the older mouse got younger, and its fur and so many different factors. So there was information in the blood of the young rat that was influencing the old rat. So Of course, that's not our study, but we thought, what would it be like to take a person who's in their 60s or 70s and pair them with a person who's in their 20s, and there had to be at least a 30-year age difference, right? And we did brain scans. We had them take these cognitive tests in the morning. We measured all kinds of factors on them. Nevertheless, they had to eat together. They had to meditate together. They had to exchange and teach back information together. They had to meet at 5:30 in the morning for their huddle group, and then they had to take these cognitive tests, right? So at the end of 1 week, first of all, let me just...
20-year-olds struggle with that 5:30 a.m. wake-up call a lot more than the 30-plus older.
They do. But it was really funny because at the beginning, so many of the elder people said, I got the wrong kid. Can I get a different person? And then a lot of the young people were saying like, oh my God, this older person is just not for me. They're really grumpy. And we're like, no, you can't change. Anyway, of course, at the end of 7 days, they were incredibly close, best friends. And the profound changes that took place in both brains, in other words, the wisdom of the elder was translated to the youth, and the plasticity of the youth was translated to the elder. So they had really powerful gamma patterns in their forebrain, in their thinking frontal lobe. The rest of the brain was this serene state of alpha, which means the brain's in a creative state. And it was dramatic in their changes in cognitive function. Both the youth and the elders outperformed anybody that we measured in the 7-day event, and their brains were changing dramatically. So compared to the people that have brain changes and biological changes at the end of 7 days that go through it, the youth and the elders outperformed everybody. So it's such a great conversation about youth and family and being with your grandparents and
something that we just don't do as much of.
Exactly.
I mean, the community tribe-like environment is something that's just continuing to diminish.
Yeah. So we reproduced that study. And then we're doing these...
And that's the one that had been so prevalent in the past that they recreated it just to prove that it was still that powerful.
And we enhanced the study. To really make it a really great triple-blind placebo study, we had controls, we had youth with youth, and we had elders with elders, so we could actually see the comparison. So we evolved the study. And then we have this ongoing study with breast milk, which is really, really interesting. Breast milk has a lot of wonderful healing properties. In fact, in many traditions, if there's a cut or a lesion, many people will put breast milk on the lesion to help it heal. And there's some value to it. So what we did is we created this simple study where we took epithelial cells, or kind of like skin cells, and they grow in a plane. So we put them on a petri dish and grew this tissue just of single cells in a flat plane. And we cut the cells, lacerated the cells, and if you do nothing to them, over the course of about 7, 8 to 10 to 14 days, that the cells will grow back and heal. So that's what it typically takes. So we took breast milk from mothers before they came to a 7-day event, and we put that breast milk on the lesion, and we saw some cell growth, like, there's some cell growth, but it still took some time, days for it to heal. But when we took...
Not 14, but 5 or something like that?
I think it was like 7. But when we took the plasma of people after they finished the 7-day event, and we took the breast milk from their plasma, when we lacerated the cells were completely healed in 48 hours. So is
this the IgA upregulation that happens?
No, this is it? We don't know if it's IgA. We don't know what it is, but there's information in the blood that's affecting the breast milk, that's pro-growth, that's pro-life, pro-health, that's causing this, whoever's receiving that, getting information to really nurture it in its environment. 48 hours, you see a complete change. So we reproduced that study as well. Finding lactating mothers that are into my work is always a little bit of a challenge.
My sister had 4 kids, so I think I have from one of her trips 2 bags of breast milk that I froze in the freezer. So I'll save those for that special occasion when I have a really intense lesion that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, it could work.
Is there anything on your mind that you are excited to implement? Is there something that's sort of on the brink?
One of the studies that has blown my mind is just we had 2 of them actually. When we did our fMRI studies with advanced meditators, we found an area of the brain that actually grew in volume. Like it grew new neurons and grew extra connections. And that's the area of the body that is connected to the default mode, which is connected to where you have an awareness of your body's orientation in space.
The one you're trying to lose when you go into meditation?
That exact area that catches you from trying to predict the future based on the past. That's what the default does. It wanders to a predictable known. So in our work, we labor for the present moment, and the act of catching yourself going unconscious and returning back to the present moment is exactly how you become more conscious and less unconscious. And it takes an enormous amount of energy, as you know, an enormous amount of awareness to get good at this. But if you keep practicing, like building a muscle, that circuitry is developed because you're using it. So we said, wow, would there be factors in the blood that would cause neurogenesis, neurons to grow? And so we took the plasma of advanced meditators, we put them on these tiny little neophyte cells, and as a result, they actually grew new connections and sprouted in ways dramatically different than the controls. So we know that there's information in the blood that creates neurogenesis. We studied 63 different diseases. In those 63 different diseases, there was a unanimous change in every single person's pain levels and their levels of energy or fatigue. There's dramatic improvement in both of those. So we did the study. We said, could the body be making its own pharmacy of morphine or opiates by thought alone?
Well, the body has the receptors for it, right? Which essentially is saying that it resides in that there's an amount of it. Or
you cannot create a drug without a receptor in the body. Right? So we discovered 100% of the people at the end of 7 days. 100% of the people were producing endogenous opiates. One particular classification was so enriched that we had to dilute the serum to be able to take the measurement. It was that concentrated. So without taking any pill or taking any exogenous substance, at the end of 7 days, independent of the disease, the body was making its natural pain relievers, and that chemical also creates a state of euphoria, relaxation.
You did say opiates, so.
Yeah, it is literally an opiate. And then the last one, just kind of where we're going, is just we've done great studies with the human microbiome. We've got the largest studies in the world on the microbiome, and we've gotten like thousands of people to participate in pre and post measurements at the end of 7 days. And at the end of 7 days, there are significant and dramatic changes in the person's microbiome, like at least 14 different really, really powerful probiotic microbiomes that diminish cancer production and reduce inflammation and increase response to cancer therapy and a host of other things. And the intriguing part is, number one, it's 7 days. The other intriguing part is that the person's not changing their diet. They're not staying away from sugar or alcohol or wine, and they're not taking probiotics. You know, they're not changing anything like that. And typically, if you do that matter to matter, it takes 3 to 6 months to see a change. But at the end of 7 days, these dramatic changes in the human microbiome suggest they're not the same person. Because if they were the same person, they'd have the same microbiome. So the evidence is conclusive over and over again that the person is actually changing. And that's really why we do meditation. We don't do meditation to heal or to create a better life. We do meditation to change. And when we change, we heal. And when we change, our life changes.
Do you believe that it's the practices that you participate in and the new environment that's creating the different environment inside of you? Or is it the sort of future you're becoming and you're actually tapping into that timeline?
Wow, I love that question. It's both. I mean, the overcoming process is the becoming process. You know, if you think about it, no matter what it is.
But the leap so quick is what's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's because you're fully immersed. Never a time will you sit with you as much as you will to know thyself, right?
It's true. So many hours of meditation at these. And so much time with yourself.
You have to become so conscious of your unconscious thoughts, the ones that are hardwired in the brain as beliefs that say, I can, it's too hard, something's wrong with me, it's my mother's fault, I'll never change, it's my ex's fault, you know, whatever that is. You got to become so conscious of your unconscious behaviors, how you speak, how you act, if you suffer, if you complain, if you blame, you make excuses. That's not the new person you want to become. You got to leave that person behind. And then you got to look at the emotions that keep you anchored to the past and the story you tell about the past that keeps that memory alive in the body and the past.
I say that too. I'm like, the story I'm telling myself is.
Yeah. And it's a lie. 50% of it is a lie. That's what neuroscience says. So people are reliving a miserable life that they never even had just to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion to excuse themselves from changing. What they're really saying is, it was that event that happened 10 years ago that changed me, and I have not been able to change since. So if you want to become happy, you got to stop being unhappy. So you got to become so conscious of your unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that you don't default when you return back into your life and return back to the same personality. Because that same personality is connected to the same personal reality that the person's living with. So they have to be able to think, act, and feel differently in the same environment. And that's when you master your life. The fundamental question is, in the 7-day process, could you come up against all of those things and not say, oh, I can't meditate, it's too hard, this isn't for me. But be curious about what's on the other side of that thought, what's on the other side of that emotion. That's the unknown. And our data shows that if you get to that point where you want to stop and you go a little further, that's when the brain changes the most, because that's when you're breaking out of the known into the unknown.
Right. So why is it always in that pain spot? The higher the level, the greater the alchemy within the body. Why is that?
So relaxing into the present moment is relaxing into the unknown. And that's
our greatest fear.
That is like, the unknown is so unpredictable. It elicits such a survival response. And yet teaching people how to relax into the unknown as they labor for the present moment, there comes a moment where you're conditioning your body to a new mind. The body wants to get up, it wants to get aroused, it wants to quit, it wants to do something. It's used to feeling from an experience in the environment, and you're denying it that. It's not eating, it's not smelling, it's not tasting, it's not seeing, it's not TikToking, it's not scrolling, it's not doing any of that stuff. And it's been habituated to rely on all those things to create a feeling. And so when you feel the frustration, the impatience, the resentment arise in your body, that's when people quit. We discovered if you just, like training an animal, settle it back down into the present moment until it's no longer the mind, that you're the mind, it will buck back again and want to have its way because it's been conditioned to feel familiar feelings from the past. If you
good or bad.
Right,
especially
good or bad.
Right? It doesn't matter. It just wants familiar.
It wants familiar. So if you work into that present moment and a person gets up and runs through the same behaviors every single day, and they're habituated into a predictable future, and they're used to doing things and getting things done, and now you're making the body sit, and it wants to get up and wants to check its emails and its texts and social media, and you're noticing your body wants to do that. Instead of getting up and doing it, bringing your body back to the present moment and executing a will that's greater than the program is training the animal. And if you can train the animal over and over again, and you're uncompromising, and you're just not going to give up because that's the act, sooner or later, the body surrenders to a new mind. And when it does, there's this liberation of energy. And that energy moves right into the heart. It's that energy is stored information in the body, and the body's being freed from the chains of the familiar past and the predictable future. So to answer your question, you can't create from the known. You got to create from the unknown, and getting people to understand how to do that is the process of overcoming yourself. We discovered that the overcoming process is literally the becoming process, because the future you that already exists in that timeline, you have to become it. So then you have to overcome the old self to become the new self and embody it. So then the next fundamental question, if you're a pragmatist, is, well, if a belief is just a thought I keep thinking over and over again into a hardwired in my brain, and I'm overcoming these beliefs, it's too hard, I can't meditate, I'll never change. And what thought do you want to fire and wire in your brain? Like, I do believe in myself, like I can do this. And remember to think that way. And with intention and with attention, review it in your mind, repeat it in your mind, remember it so you don't forget it. Nerve cells that fire together wire together. You start installing the circuitry in your brain. Keep doing it. The more those neurons fire, the more automatically they fire, the easier it gets. Now you're you're creating a new belief. That's the new voice in your head that says that I can. Now, there's no magic there. It's just stop thinking this way, start thinking this way. Okay, if I complain and I blame and I make excuses and I feel sorry for myself and I judge everyone, a happy person, that makes me unhappy. I gotta stop doing that. So how am I going to be with my ex? How am I going to be with my coworker? How am I going to be with my partner? How am I going to be with my kids? How am I going to be in my life? And this is what many people become aware of when they are in the process of healing. Like, I just had a 1-hour great meditation, and then I spent the rest of the day acting as my old self or feeling like my old self. Okay, I gotta act differently with my ex. What would love do? What would greatness look like?
There's a saying that you don't get what you want, you get what you believe you deserve.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you have to become bigger, better than you.
Exactly.
Right? Because the reason why you're stuck in those patterns or those loops or those situations is because subconsciously or consciously, you think that's what you deserve because of the story you've told yourself.
Yeah, and the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving. So so it's important then exactly for the person then to say, okay, I'm worthy of love in my life. Okay, so how should I act differently? Could I forgive? What would that look like? And the act of closing their eyes and planning their behaviors, mentally rehearsing their actions.
Yeah.
When they're truly present, you know this, you're an athlete. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. And now you're installing the neurological hardware in your brain. You're priming your brain. You're installing circuits to use so you behave differently. Keep reviewing them, and the brain will look like you already did it. Now, your behaviors will match your intentions in your life, and you won't default and return back to the old personality. Okay, if I've been feeling unhappy, if I've been feeling resentful, if I've been feeling fearful, if I've been feeling unworthy, and I want to be abundant, I can't feel any of those things or lack. Or I want to be happy, I can't feel all these emotions. I can feel new emotions. Okay, can I literally teach my body emotionally what this future me would feel like before it happens?
Very hard.
Very hard. Very hard, because we're hypnotized and conditioned to believe that something out there has to happen to take away that lack or separation that we feel inside of us.
We haven't been there, so we have to imagine the feeling. We did the small little one-day event many years ago, and you taught us how to manifest something with the idea of what it is that you want, and 4 or 5 reasons why, 4 or 5 elevated emotions, having done it or accomplished it or received it. And when you go into those elevated emotions, you put yourself there. So you have to take the time to think of how it's going to be. Yeah. And you go, okay, it's going to feel like elation. It's going to be like joy. It's going to be like awe. And you can kind of go into it and you picture it as that you want, and you get into those feelings, and it becomes the full body experience.
Exactly.
And as I told you, it came 2 hours after that meditation, what I wanted. 2 hours.
Yeah, and it will happen in no time because you created it in no time.
Why is that? Why is it that when we get into alignment that things go so fast?
When we can disinvest all of our attention and energy out of this 3-dimensional world, when you forget about your body, when you forget about all the people in your life, when you forget about all the objects and things around you, all the places you need to go or the places you've been or the place you're sitting, and you're not thinking about the predictable future, the familiar past, you found the sweet spot of the present moment. The moment you get beyond yourself, you're passing through the eye of the needle from 3D physical reality into that quantum reality. And in the quantum, everything's connected. So all you need is a coherent brain, which is a function of a clear intention.
Okay.
And combine that with an elevated emotion, heartfelt emotion. And the heart produces a profound, coherent magnetic field. Okay.
And this is the heart-brain coherence that you refer to.
Yeah, we work really diligently.
See it, feel it.
Yeah. When you are in that state where you are literally feeling the emotion of your future before it happens, so many crazy things happen in that field because now you're creating a coherent signature of information in the quantum field. The closer you are or the more connected you are to that field, the shorter amount of time it should appear in 3-dimensional reality. When we create from the field instead of from matter, we can shorten the distance between the thought of what we want and the experience of having it. And you just got to get to that place where you're not preoccupied by, or your awareness is no longer invested in this 3-dimensional world. You got to become unaware of everything around you, to become aware of nothing but you. And in that place, If you can combine that clear intention, the thought being the electrical charge in the quantum field, and the elevated emotion, the feeling being the magnetic charge, now you have a Wi-Fi signal. And when there's a vibrational match between your energy and some potential in the quantum field, you no longer have to go do anything to get it.
It's not a linear.
You're going to draw the experience to you.
As you draw it, it's like goes from point A to point B in a linear way, and you flip it on its head, and it's all available at all times.
At all times. So then the possibility will appear in no time because you created from no time. And then what does that prove to you? It proves that you're the creator of your life. Like, oh my God, I forgot I am a creator. Well, that was really easy when I got out of the way.
Why don't I do this every day of my life? It kind of like blows me away sometimes.
It's the experiment. But the person who's truly interested in proving to themselves that it's the truth, then they're involved in the experiment. It means they can't get up from their meditation as the same person who sat down, because if they do, nothing happens. You got to transform your biology, your neurocircuitry changes, your neurochemistry changes, your hormones change, your gene expression changes. You change in that process. And so we've worked for years to demystify the process. What we discovered is that it's this simple formula of being relaxed in your heart. And the more relaxed you are in your heart, the more awake you are in the brain. That's just the way it goes. Instead of stressed out, unconscious, and being in a program, you can teach people actually how to sustain the state. And the heart is the creative center. We have to fall in love with our creation. And when the heart moves into coherence, we've measured this so many times. When energy makes it to the heart, the moment it makes it to the heart, it tells the brain it's time to create. And now the brain gets super creative. It moves into these elegant, coherent alpha patterns.
So it becomes the tuner. You're saying when it says create, it goes, we're going to tune. We're going to turn this dial to 98.6.
Exactly.
This is what you want.
Exactly. And what it does is it naturally starts to dream. It naturally starts to imagine. It naturally starts to create a new possibility. What would it be like to be wealthy, to be healthy, to be free, to be unlimited? And the forebrain switches on, and the thought in your mind becomes more real than anything else. To the passionate person who's in that state, they're already feeling as if it's already happening. The stronger the emotion you feel in that moment, the more you remember that vision. And now you're branding it neurologically and conditioning it to the body, and the body's getting a taste.
Because essentially that's what a trauma is when something negative happens, there's an emotion attached to it. So if you can do that on the flip side of something so positive and have an emotion, it etches that in as a positive experience, and it does the same thing.
That's brilliant. That's exactly what it is. So then the stronger the emotion we feel from some trauma, some shock, some betrayal, some loss, the more altered we are inside of us. That moment where we're out of normal chemical continuity, the brain freezes that frame right in front of you and takes a snapshot, and that's called a long-term memory. And that information from your environment is being embossed holographically into networks in the brain. So the person not knowing this keeps reviewing the event 50, 100 times a day, keeps telling the story. And the body's so objective, it's reliving the experience of the thought and the feeling, the image, the emotion, the stimulus and response is conditioning the body to become the mind of the past. Okay, so theoretically then, if it was a strong shock or a strong betrayal, then it would have to mean that in order to move the brain and body out of the past, you would have to feel an emotion with such a quotient of energy that it would be greater than the trauma and the betrayal. But in 7 days, many people hit that moment where they're so in love with their future that they forget about their past. And they're literally dragging their brain and body out of the past into the present moment. And the side effect of that is a healing because the body's no longer being abused by the event that it thinks it's in emotionally. So then, yes, you can also chisel away at it every day and keep working on the elevated emotions of your future and stop feeling the emotions of your past. And your chemistry will actually change. And then there'll come a moment where you're so in love with your future and you can see the vision so clear in your mind that it's greater than the quotient of the betrayal in the past. And that's the moment your life changes, right? And nothing changes in our life until we change. Right?
So what's heartbreak then?
Yeah, that's the moment where your whole world, as you know it, has changed to such a degree that it leaves a very strong scar or wound in the heart, like a hole in the heart, right? So that's the moment the protective networks switch on in the brain and says, close this down, never be vulnerable again. It's a loss that we're feeling, a part of our heart that we're in love with or we felt connected to is now broken or missing. God, there's so much great data on how to heal trauma. And what we know and what the research shows is that once energy moves into the heart and the heart starts sustaining a certain level of coherence, the heart will tell the brain, will tell the amygdala, the trauma's over. It'll say the event is over because now the heart is moving out of the emotion of shock or betrayal or loss. And so there's nothing wrong with feeling those emotions when we have them. But the question is, how long are we going to feel them for, right? Because we have to heal. And
is it the longer we think them, the worse it gets, or no?
Oh, if we ruminate over the same experience, it becomes our identity. And that's when it becomes a problem, because now it's very hard to confront the identity when it's you, right? But many people learn from the experience, because the moment they feel that feeling that they've never felt before, and they're so altered, I really think it's the moment where they can finally see themselves through the eyes of someone else. No email, no dinner, no social media, no movie, no drug, no drink is taking away that feeling, right? So this is the moment where they start observing how they've been thinking. They start looking at themselves, how they've been acting and speaking, and looking how they've been feeling. They're objectifying their subjective self, and in neuroscience that's called metacognition. So the person who's been wounded from the experience, if they're interested in evolving and getting past the emotion of that experience, the memory of that event without the emotional charge is called wisdom, right? And that's the name of the game, right? That's the name of the game.
True.
And so then think about this. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is not like, hey, I'm going to forgive you. Just know that I'm going to forgive you. I'm not keeping track, but I forgave you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like that. It's when you really feel your heart open. Yeah. Oxytocin levels go up dramatically. That's what our research shows too. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals another chemical to cause the arteries in your heart to engorge with blood. So blood moves right into your heart. And in that state, it's impossible to hold a grudge. The research on oxytocin is a person who's been betrayed cannot hold a grudge anymore. Forgiveness, then, is when the emotion is transformed into a greater level of consciousness. And now you feel so good.
Into wisdom?
Yeah, into wisdom. And you feel so good that when you don't even want to think about that. You've already forgiven them.
Learned the lesson.
Yeah, because you learned the lesson, like, I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
It was great. My life is great. I'm on to the next thing. Yeah, sure. I was part of that.
Pull the emotion away from it.
Yeah, but transmuting the emotion, right?
Right.
You don't say, oh, my heart is empty, so I'm going to fill it with something outside of me. Like, oh, let me heal this thing. So how do I do that? Okay, so I got to work with my body. I got to put my attention in my heart. Where I place my attention is where I place my energy. We discovered that that's exactly the truth. You put your attention on there, and there's a very low frequency that naturally goes up in a few minutes. And that's the energy that's indigenous to the heart. That's what the heart feeds off.
That's part of the meditations too, of going into, which is so great. 1, 2, 3, 1, 4, 6, right? When you go through the chakras and you put energy to them, is to get them to move, get coherence.
Right, exactly. Get coherent. The function of getting the heart in that state where they can sustain that level of heart coherence is literally the magic, because it resets the baseline. So now you get the body's in the sympathetic response. Okay, so how do we get the body out of that shock? It's in protective mode. The protective networks are switched on, and it doesn't want to feel that again because, of course, it would hurt more. So then we got to
your body will do, your ego, your body, whatever you call it, will do everything it can to not go to that same deep wound again.
So let's heal the body. So now let's get the body out of fight or flight. So you slow your breathing down, you slow your brain waves down. You slow your breathing down, you get closer to the autonomic nervous system. You slow your breathing down, it gives your heart to move out of that damaged state and start to relax. Teach a person to relax into their heart. Relaxing into the heart goes against being in survival and feeling the emotions of anger and hatred and fear and anxiety and all the other ones. So converting and transmuting that emotion and staying with it and breathing, working with your heart is very loving to you. I can't let this moment be my identity that I take into my future for the rest of my life. How am I going to do this? I got to start feeling these emotions, and I got to work with my body and work with feeling love. That's what it really wants to feel. So if you see the body as an animal and you're training the animal, you're like, okay, you got traumatized. Okay, let's work with you. I'm going to be patient with you. I'm going to be kind to you. I can care again. What am I grateful for? Let me just stop focusing on that event and let me just work with you. It turns out that when you do that really well, your body starts making a host of different chemicals that really help it to move back into health and balance. It's moving back into homeostasis. So the broken heart is an event that was so shocking, so traumatic, that the protective networks switch on in the brain and it closes down. It literally closes off. There's a loss of energy in the heart. Okay, so yeah, you can use pharmaceuticals, and yeah, you can exercise and do all those things, but sooner or later, you're going to have to get beyond that past experience and turn it into wisdom. And the brain may think, but the heart knows. And we got to find that place where we heal our hearts.
How damaging is the pharmaceutical industry with overall health and what you're trying to cure?
Medicine has a lot of great contributions to health. I don't know how much organized medicine contributes to a person's total health.
Right.
I think it's like 10% if I saw the data, because there's so many other variables that have to do with lifestyle. And lifestyle, chronic health conditions, which is the majority of health conditions, are created from lifestyle, behavior, and choices. So if you're going to change
and emotions,
and 75 to 90% of every person.
Right, sure. There's drinking, smoking, not sleeping, thinking negative thoughts. I mean, these are all buckets, right?
All of those things knock you out of balance.
Right.
But 75 to 90% of every person that walks into a doctor's office in the Western world walks in because of emotional and psychological stress. That's 8 or 9 out of 10 people are showing up in a doctor's office because of their own psychological or emotional stress. They're making themselves sick by responding and reacting to someone or something or their own thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So physical stress is traumas and injuries and accidents and falls and loss of sleep, and chemical imbalances, deficiencies and blood sugar levels and toxins and viruses and bacterias and blood sugar levels. And then there's emotional and psychological stress, which is, betrayals, family tragedies, losses, job stress, whatever it is. And all of those things take the body out of normal regulation and balance and knock it out of balance. The stress response is what the body naturally does to return itself back to order. Okay, think about this. You can get a person doing interval training, high-intensity workouts.
Yeah.
They can do massage, acupuncture, chiropractic, Pilates, foundation training. They can take all the peptides, all their vitamins, their minerals. They could do intermittent fasting. They could do all that stuff. Eat organic, eat raw, eat vegan. But if they're living in constant emergency, in fear and anxiety and anger and resentment, they're never going to be in balance, because all the work they do to become chemically balanced and physically balanced is going to be derailed because of their emotional response. So emotional regulation, it's not, look, I react, everybody reacts. The question is, how long are you going to react? That's the real question. Teaching people how to convert and switch out of that sympathetic response into something else. Justified, valid or not, the only person that's hurting is ourselves, right? It's like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies. Your emotional response is only weakening the organism, right? So I think when people get the information and they reason with it, they're like, oh my God, I'm not going to hold on to that past event any longer, and I'm just going to let it go. And as a result of it, their simple choice to do that with the understanding actually changes something in their life. And that's the experiment. I change, my life changes. So overcome and become. Break the habit of being yourself. Shorten the refractory period of your emotional responses, and you'll keep your body and brain out of the past. And when it's the hardest, it matters the most.
What's the difference between stress and anxiety?
Stress is when the brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis. One of the emotions that are created from the stress response is fear. And fear is connected to anxiety, and anxiety to worry and insecurity, right? So then when we're feeling fear, what we're typically doing, and this is an unconscious process in our mind, we're selecting in stress and in when we're out of balance, out of the infinite possibilities that we could think about in the quantum
worst
field,
ones?
we're choosing the worst case scenario.
Done it.
And then we embellish it. Oh my God, what if this happens?
yeah.
And what if that, this could happen?
Literally the worst case scenario.
And that is a creative process. It is a creative process because what you're doing is you're actually feeling the emotion of that event if it happens, and your body is becoming conditioned emotionally into anxiety. So it's that image and that emotion, that thought and that feeling, that stimulus and response that's conditioning the body to become the mind of anxiety. Do it over and over again and make some bad lifestyle choices, and then your body's going to have a panic attack. Try as you may to control it with your conscious mind. You can't. You programmed it subconsciously. So many people say, oh, it's a chemical imbalance in your brain. Well, yeah, it's true. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. You have a panic attack. If you're in the supermarket and you have a panic attack, you look around, your heart is racing, you're seeing flashes of light, you can't breathe, and you think it's something going on in the supermarket. You're correlating the outer world with what's going on in your inner world, and now you'll avoid supermarkets or open spaces, right? Take the pharmaceutical. The pharmaceutical will help to create some chemical balance. Yeah, it's hardware, it's circuits, it's chemistry. But more than likely, you'll still avoid open spaces. Or if it happens on an airplane, you won't get on an airplane. You won't do that. So are you really healed? I don't know. Then is it a software problem? Are you a perfectionist? Was your father a perfectionist? Was he overbearing? Okay, does the insight and understanding it's a software problem change the behavior? No. If you were going to the psychic and the psychic said, oh, you were burned at the stake in Carcassonne, you were a charismatic Christian in
Salem,
Salem, and the memory of your traumas burned in your soul, and that's why you have anxiety. That doesn't change the anxiety. It actually reaffirms it. You go to the cocktail party and say, I was burned at the stake. Then you go to the astrologer, and the astrologer says Mercury's in the wrong house.
Burned at the stake.
Yeah. None of those things really help a person to understand that we discovered it's that process of sitting with yourself, and we've hundreds of, actually thousands of brain scans of people with anxiety, really high beta brainwave patterns. They change in 7 days, 4 days, because they're catching themselves going to that automatic future scenario. And
it's that refractory period.
And bringing themselves back to the present moment. And the only way you become conscious is catching yourself going unconscious. And it's
like meditation.
It's exactly what it is.
Meditating is the act of bringing yourself back, right?
Over and over again.
Over and over again.
And that's exactly what changes the anxiety.
So do you think that when you connect with that future you, that you can actually change the scenario you're in, or do you draw in a new one? Meaning, like, can you control reality is what I'm saying.
Give me an example.
Like, let's an example would be like, you're in a relationship and there's something someone's doing, and you end up sort of rectifying the relationship you have with it, and you don't see it the same way. Now, do you think that you actually change that reality, let's say, with that person, or does that then kind of end and then the new one comes in because you are aligned with something different? Do you think you can actually control reality, like something outside of you?
I do. I don't think you control people, though. I think that when we're creating and it's not happening, it's not working for you, I think that's when people try to control and force and fight and compete and predict an outcome because they're mad or trying to change matter. They're rushing to get it done, to take away the feeling of lack or separation, right? Get to the experience so that it can take away the lack of not having it. But I do think that if you do practice creating from the field instead of from matter, the coincidences, the synchronicities, the opportunities, the interactions, spontaneity that happens when you're in a different energy somehow bends reality. And so those synchronicities it's feedback from our outer world to say, keep doing what you're doing and changing your inner world, and I'll keep sending you breadcrumbs to keep creating, because the synchronicity actually begins to strengthen your belief a little bit more, like, what I'm doing in here Just did that. I'm going to do a little more of this to get a little more of that. So that's when you start saying, if I change my inner world, will my outer world change? And that's the experiment, right? So how it happens and when it happens is none of our business, because that would be predictable.
That's the frustrating part.
Yeah,
that's the unknown.
Yeah. And then we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to happen. And that's not one leap. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery. If you could expect it, if you can expect it or predict it, it would be the known. Here's a great way to think about it. If you get up from your meditation feeling like it's already happened, and you can maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, it's impossible for you to look for it. You cannot look for it if you feel like it's already happened. You only look for it when you feel like you haven't happened. So the person who says, how come I'm not healed? That's the old personality. The new personality would never say that. They would be walking in the glory of being healed and practicing, teaching their body what it would feel like to be healed. That would be the work, right? So you could have 1 hour meditation, be all holy and all connected, and you spend the rest of your day stressed out, resentful, judgmental. How can your body heal? The person who's really saying, oh my God, now I got to get so good at doing it with my eyes closed. I got to do it with my eyes open. Wow. Now the game changes, because if I do sustain this state, and I'm a creator, well, then there should be something new that appears in my life. And the energy and the excitement from that coincidence inspires me to want to keep creating. And that's the experiment. Can I see how, I'm not talking.
This is the walking meditation part of the retreats too, right?
Yeah,
can you
exactly.
do it with your eyes open?
Yeah.
So when you connect with that future timeline, you see it, you feel it, but then there's some magic in not in letting it go and sort of not reaching and grabbing for it. And you just close the loop with that, because when you are it, when you embody it, when you're in it, if you can remember back to the meditation or the visualization or the embodiment of the way it will feel having accomplished, you no longer want it because it just is. Exactly. So then you've literally cut off that whole reaching part that blocks it. Exactly. Because it really does feel like it blocks it.
Yeah, when you're reaching, you're separate, right? You're trying.
Right, because it implies it's not there.
And that's what happens, I think, at the end of a 7-day event. People change so much emotionally that they feel like they believe in their future because it feels like it's already happened, and they're not obsessing about it. They're just so there's this kind of delicate balance between intention and surrender, right? Intention is getting clear on what you want, and surrendering is trusting in the outcome. If you overintend, you're trying. If you over surrender, you're lazy and lethargic. Right. It's that razor's edge where you have to really kind of master that trust. And I think the heart is a great way for us to surrender, because when I truly feel that feeling, I trust in the future. Yeah. And if I trust in the future, then I'm not in the way. Yeah. When I get in the way, I think the universe says, okay, bro, go for it. You want to do it your way? Let's see how it goes.
And you're also basking in the feeling.
Yeah, of course.
So you're still in it. If it's a strong enough emotion, you get to kind of sit in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's no need to reach, wonder, stress, worry, because you're in it.
It's already happened. Your body's believing it's already happened.
Yeah.
So that's why I think gratitude is just such a powerful emotion, because when you receive something favorable or wonderful just happened to you, you feel gratitude. So the emotional signature of gratitude is something wonderful just happened. There's something wonderful is happening to me right now. When you feel gratitude, you're in the ultimate state of receivership, because the body's so objective. It's believing it's happening when? Now. And so people who experiment with gratitude see so many reasons in their life, in the self-reflective universe, to have more reasons to be grateful. Be really unhappy, be really judgmental, and you will see through that lens all the time. And that's the only reality. We don't see things how they are, we see things how we are, right? So that's the only reality the person sees, through that lens. So if the emotion is bitterness, they'll see through the lens of bitterness. If their emotion, if the thought and the hardwired belief is judgment and the behavior is judgment, then they'll judge everything in their life. So transform them into gratitude, then they're grateful for a glass of water. They're grateful to be sitting with you. Pro-social networks turn on the brain. We move closer to each other. We trust one another more. We appreciate the moment more. That is the natural state of being when we're not in stress, when we're not in survival, when the animal self has been tamed, the divine, the creative self kind of is birthed. So then it is that taming process of the animal self that takes the work, makes the work valid, because I've seen this, I've discovered this, that at the end of 7 days, after 4 walking meditations, after 4 a.m. meditations, me stretching them way past where they normally go, and they're showing up for themselves, they're showing up. Sooner or later, they start feeling really worthy of their future. But without trying, they just feel worthy. Like, yeah. I put in my time, like universe, like I'm worthy. And I think that's when the universe responds. So basking in that feeling is basking in the present moment, because the body's living in that future, and it's not gonna try to forecast it.
Stressful place.
Yeah, that's right.
Stressful place.
Let the details work out. Now, the experiment though is that, and this has happened to me and many people. So what if it doesn't happen in 2 times? What if it doesn't happen in 3 times? You're going to give up and say it didn't work? We're going to say, what is it about me that I need to change in order for my life to change? I think that's the really important point. So if it doesn't work for 2 weeks, you keep going. You keep going, and you keep learning, and you keep applying, and you keep getting better. And then when it starts to happen, and it happens in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you'll say those 3 weeks or 4 weeks are the best use of my time. So the experiment has to continue, and we have to make time to be creators in our life.
I want to talk a little bit about what your film, there's so much about it, about people that are unwell on very high levels, whether they can't see, can't walk. There was a story about a woman who regrew an organ, her thyroid. These are incredible stories. So going back, what is it that creates disease?
First of all, let me respond to that. When I didn't know about the woman who grew her thyroid back. I was on the camera when they told me, and I was like, what? It was a stretch for me, a big stretch for me. I think there's 2 components to disease, really. I think there's a genetic component, in sometimes that gene is signaled in utero and is expressed from birth. Those are tough, juvenile onset genetic conditions. They're tough health conditions.
Would you say that those tend to be onset early on, if that's the case?
The onset early is early on, and they're more hardwired in a sense. Okay. They're harder to change.
Perhaps not really something that you see at 45.
Right,
but
right.
2.
Or 1.
Or
birth. Or 3. It's juvenile onset. It's genetically signaled. And those tend to be a little bit more difficult because they're a little bit more hardwired, like a type 1 diabetes, right? It's an early onset condition. Those are about 5 to 1% of the population, small percent with Tay-Sachs disease or sickle cell anemia or type 1 diabetes. The other 95 to 99%, really, as I said, is lifestyle. And the big thing, of course, is trying to keep your body physically, chemically, and emotionally in balance. And when if the autonomic nervous system is what regulates homeostasis and balance, every response that you have emotionally to your environment is moving you out of normal homeostasis and balance, and that's where health exists, right? Yeah. Keep knocking the body out of balance, that imbalance becomes a new balance, and now we're headed for disease. But let's go a step further. Yeah. What if you start anticipating the worst case scenario in your mind? You start feeling the anxiety of that event occurring. You're knocking your brain and body out of balance by thought alone. And now this is where your thoughts can literally make you sick, because the long-term effects of the hormones of stress push the genetic buttons that create disease. And my response to my coworker, my response to traffic, my response to my ex is actually weakening my organism, because my body can't live in emergency mode for an extended period of time. And the response causes the brain to fire incoherently, causes the heart to fire incoherently, and now the autonomic nervous system is out of order and out of regulation, and it controls and coordinates all other systems in the body. The cardiovascular system, the reproductive system, the digestive system, the immune system. It controls, it's the major player in sending information to all the cells and tissues in the body. So it needs a cadence. It needs a rhythm. It needs an order. So if you teach people how to change their brain waves and learn how to create more coherent brain waves, and our data is fabulous around this, like really fabulous. Our fMRI studies and our QEEG studies that people can do it. that the brain becomes more holistically, globally synchronized. And what syncs in the brain links in the brain, right? So getting a person back into autonomic regulation, teaching them to slow their brain waves down, energy leaves the thinking neocortex and it moves right into the limbic brain, the seat of the autonomic nervous system. Get some coherence in there, and now the autonomic nervous system is regulating back to order. And when it's in cadence and there's a coherence to it, it's sending clear information to the cells and tissues in the body. It's getting the right information.
So is it allowing the environment for the operation of the body to be fully functional in its ability to heal?
Yes.
Or is it the actual frequency that you're creating that doesn't allow anything to sort of resonate at a frequency that creates?
That's a great question. The answer is absolutely both. First and foremost, get the body into homeostasis and balance. We've seen this thousands of times. Tachycardias, arrhythmias, food sensitivities, acid reflux, constipation, name it that has to do with any of those systems. They start writing themselves back to order, and the innate intelligence of the body can do something really amazing, and that is repair and restore the body back to health. That's what the intelligence is about. Now, that happens a lot in this work, but we discovered when people get really relaxed in their heart and awake in their brain, and they slow their brain waves down into these very, very slow theta brainwave states. Theta is a hypnotic state, and in that hypnotic state, that's when you're suggestible to information.
How does it go? Beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma.
Gamma. Higher than beta.
Which is so crazy because it's like a super high frequency.
It's super high.
Okay, but it's like basically the next. It's like, okay, go ahead.
So if you can get the person into theta.
Theta's the wake ups, go to sleep.
Yeah, that's when you're half awake and half asleep.
Right.
That's when your body's asleep and your mind is awake. That's when you're relaxed in your heart and awake in your brain. Right. There's a door right there.
Right.
And you're real suggestible to information. What a hypnotist does when they hypnotize somebody, they're giving them suggestions and they're accepting those suggestions. They're believing in them. They're surrendering to them without analyzing them. And it's actually causing them to subconsciously change.
Kind of not really thinking about the past or the future. You're just kind of
taking whatever's coming in. Right. But the person sitting in the meditation has their eyes closed. The music is filling the room. They're not eating, they're not smelling, they're not feeling, and they're not touching, but they're still suggestible to information. And their brain is in beautiful level of coherence. When that occurs, we can predict what's going to happen next. We can predict it. If I see that on a brain scan, I could say to any scientist, she's going to pop right now. She's going to pop in 5 minutes. What does that mean? And all of a sudden, energy is moving right out of the thinking brain, right into the limbic brain, and that person connects to energy. That person is connecting to frequency. Okay. And all frequency carries information. And that's not information coming from...
So in the field, a frequency in the field.
Exactly.
Not their own, but...
Not the frequency coming from information from their environment. What they're seeing, light bouncing off of objects.
Quantum field.
Yeah, they're interacting with a frequency that's faster than the speed of light, and there is an immediate arousal that takes place in the autonomic nervous system, and it goes into super natural high levels of gamma. In fact, I was on a call with a researcher from Australia, Bond University, in which she did an analysis on about 5,600 brain scans, and she was like,
oh, wow.
I cannot believe the amount of gamma that we see in your community. Like 3 standard deviations outside of normal is an outlier. That's 2% of the population. We're talking about 200, 300, 400 standard deviations, insanely.
Well, I've watched it on stage. I've watched you bring up a few people and watch them tap into this state, into gamma, and like, it's quite the...
Yeah, it's an arousal.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. The body, there's a lot of movement,
and that energy,
sound.
that the autonomic nervous system is resonating in a very high state of coherence. Gamma brainwave frequencies, and gamma frequency is super consciousness, and every now single cell in the body that the autonomic nervous system is touching is energy is informing matter, and the body in some level gets an automatic upgrade. Like there's the blindness, now they're seeing. There's the deafness, now they're hearing. There's the stage 4 cancer in the bones, in the organs, it's gone. There's whatever chronic health condition, tumors, whatever it is, it's there and now it's not. Somehow the body gets an upgrade. The body's lifted by a greater frequency. And that kind of regulation in that gamma state is way outside of normal. And the frequency is so fast that it's causing the cells to get electrically activated. And in a sense, the brain and body move right into the present moment. And that's when the autonomic nervous system delivers in no time. That's when the person goes, oh my God, the arousal wasn't fear. The arousal wasn't pain. The arousal wasn't aggression or anger. The arousal was ecstasy. Like whatever that was profound. I never felt anything like this. I never felt a level of love. And they don't have the language to be able to explain what it was, right? So
it's beyond.
So that is what Source, the documentary, is about. Because when we take the blood of people who have had those experiences, and we put them in the presence of a SARS-CoV-2 virus, there's information in the plasma of an advanced meditator that causes the virus it can't enter the cell. There's a resistance.
Right, like almost like a frequency, like it just can't get in.
The cell is greater than the environment. We've isolated the protein as information in the blood that inhibits the virus from entering the cell. Take that plasma of an advanced meditator that has that experience and put it in the presence of a cancer cell, a uterine cancer cell, a breast cancer cell, a pancreatic cancer cell. 84% of the population at the end of 7 days, 84% is taking 70% of the mitochondrial function out of cancer cells. So there's no energy for reproduction in the cancer cell. There's no energy to move or grow. The cancer cell, the lights are out. That's information in the plasma. There's more wholeness, there's more life, there's more order. The same thing happens, as I said, with neurogenesis. There's chemicals in there that cause neurons to grow. There's chemicals in there that cause pain to be reduced. There's information in the blood that changes the microbiome, that changes breast milk. Their interaction with energy, their interaction with frequency, when the brain and heart are coherent, when there's a coherence between the autonomic nervous system and the field, it can read information. And the information has a greater level of consciousness, a greater level of order. And somehow the brain and body are changed immediately. And there's magic in the plasma of those people. There's information in their blood that did not come from their senses. It came from their interaction with frequency and energy.
So there are studies and tests that have been done. Actually, people do this regularly, I think, where they have like feces transplants, and it really helps heal the body by using someone else's feces. Microbiome, and even like a thin person, you can use that and put that in someone else, and it will make the person that is not thin or is overweight thinner.
Yeah.
Do you think that the future of understanding plasma and blood and these things is that essentially you shortcut and you don't have to necessarily go through the process of changing your mind? You can actually get sort of a transfer of these
without a physical transfer.
Without the physical, you can. Yeah. There's this transference. There's an alchemy that happens with receiving plasma or feces or whatever those things are that create the environment, and that it will make the change.
My answer is absolutely yes. I've seen the data. I'm not saying this. The data's saying that. I'm not saying it at all. In fact, that's what the data suggests. Wow. That without ever taking a fecal transplant, at the end of 7 days, there's so many robust probiotic changes that are happening in the gut of a person who moves out of stress and survival. And so without taking any exogenous substance, we've discovered that the autonomic nervous system is the greatest pharmacist in the world. In fact, it works better than any drug.
A fecal transplant or a plasma transplant or something like that isn't the way.
That is a healing modality. And if people need a blood transplant or a fecal transplant, there's nothing wrong with that if that helps them to move back into health and balance. My question is, if you don't change, is your
temporary?
It's temporary, right? Okay. So, but medicine and healthcare has evolved in a way to help people matter. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do matter stuff all the time. But then there's this whole other element where, like, wow, there's information in the blood of an advanced meditator. Could we use that plasma in a blood transfusion? Mm-hmm. Could we use those microbes in a supplement that could help a person who's not ready to change or hasn't bought in on the idea that when they change, their health and their life can change? They may not be ready for that, but we can offer solutions. So the conversations we're having in medicine now are completely different conversations because we're looking at it more from a holistic standpoint. And gosh, I've been at this for so long, Danica, and I can happily say that you can't call this pseudoscience any longer. It's no longer pseudoscience. And that's what we tried to do in the documentary. Bring some people on who have had profound experiences, reversing cancer or, growing another thyroid back. I mean, it's insane. It was insane for me. Show people the extent of what's possible, then show the data that's actually supporting the transformations that we're seeing. We have hundreds and thousands of transformations of people that are, sometimes I have to watch the testimonials 50 times because it's unbelievable for me. It's stretching my belief.
It's one way of reprogramming, repetition, which you do an incredible job of. I think that's all very much part of your work, is that repetition and reminding people over and over again what is possible. I'm curious, where do you get the stamina for all of this? Where do you get the energy for this? Even if we speak just directly to the events, let's say, I've seen it. 7 days, it's you 98.5% of the time on stage, including the meditations. It's incredible. Where do you get the motivation?
I think it's two things. First thing is, the surf is up. I never dreamed of seeing the outcomes that we're seeing, either in science or in human testimony. And I think there's something really magical that is born in us. There's an empathy, and it's really deep in the species of humans when we're a part of change and transformation. That I'm very mission driven, and I'm driven by a mission that if we transform enough people, we can transform the world. And to empower people on some level that they're the creator of their life, or at least have a hand in staying more conscious that they can make better choices even. To whatever degree the person applies it, seeing the transformation, seeing the person stand on the stage is worth all the lost luggage, all the missed flights, all the timing, the jet lag, all that stuff, the food, whatever. Witnessing that and being part of that, there's an empathy that happens in a human being when we know that one of the tribe has made it and we were somehow part of that. I think we're wired socially to be that way. So my inspiration really comes from all the things that are happening in the research and in the human testimony, and we're working with prisons now, we're working with Navy SEALs, we're working with teachers, we're working with indigenous tribes, teaching cultural change, and it's working, right? And people are changing on all different cultures and all, but everything's the same. The model is still the same, and people are meeting information on their own level and applying it. So being a part of that and seeing that, I think something for me, it makes it super exciting. Like, it's really exciting. I love my job. I love what I do. Of course, I work long hours and it's a lot, but by the same means, there's something wonderful in knowing that on some level you're helping people change their lives. So I'm very mission driven, and so my mission gets me up in the morning, and I love the 7-day events. Yeah, they're long hours, and I'm pushing people past where they normally stop because I believe in them. Yeah, I believe in possibility. I think there's goodness in human beings when they finally move out of survival and get beyond themselves. So the 7-day events are an intense time, full immersion. I've done 51 of them. This is my 52nd one next week. When we survey people, they say it's the best week of their life. So to me, then, I'm adding value to a person's life, and that's part of my mission. I love that. On a second level, I do my best to be the example of this work. I do my best to apply all the things that I've learned from my own experience, and to be able to continue my own personal evolution, to make time for myself, to be around people I love. When I'm home, to rest and take care of myself. I love to take care of my body and to keep myself back in balance. And sometimes, when I'm home for a week and then I'm gone again, or 10 days and I'm gone again, I know it's a lot, and it's a lot for everybody in my life. If I can get myself in balance in my life, then I can stay in that creative place, so I work on balancing this. We have so many sister companies now from Encephalon that, we're with the research and with, Inner Health Coalition, with doctors, with corporations, and all these things we're doing to change. So there's a lot of things that are happening. I have that administrative role as a leader in the company, but at the same time, I have to have time for being creative, and so I have to have time for myself to be able to move myself back into balance.
Smart. You had mentioned mission, whether it's your mission that you describe or your calling in this life. What do you feel like that is? And even if you were to sort of summarize that to something short, what is your calling?
I don't think much about what I do as a calling at all.
Really?
I don't. I'm a really simple person, and I'm sincere in just about everything that I do. My calling is to be the best human I could possibly be. I think that's everybody's calling. I think it's to step out of the known into the unknown and to continue to create. You heal yourself. The next question is heal someone else. Heal someone else. Get that down. Heal someone else at a distance. There's never an end, because every new experience causes us to think about things we would have never thought before unless we had that. So I never want this work to be about me. I want it to be about you. I want it to be about the person, to empower the person that they are the creator of their life.
That's what happened when you walked in. My producer, Jen, saying, you healed my asthma. And you said, no, you healed your asthma.
Yeah, I want people to be empowered by that. I want people to walk around with a smile on their face that they can't remove because they know something. They know something. So I think my mission, though, is really to be a part of transformation, to make a difference on some level. So look, my calling is really just to be the best human I possibly can, really, and I want this work to be about everybody, and I think that's when collective consciousness changes.
That's right. Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.